Hey, do you teach yoga? Have you ever trained to lead yoga classes, to be a yoga therapist? Have you ever owned a yoga studio? Maybe even just wondered what it was like for the women and men up there in front of the room on their mats, leading you through endless Surya Namaskars, down dogs, and pranayamas galore? Well, these are their stories, and mine. I'm Rebecca Sebastian, a 20-year yoga teacher, 10-year yoga therapist, yoga studio owner, and co-founder of a yoga-focused nonprofit. I've done a lot in the yoga world over the last 20 years, pretty much everything except had a water cooler. You know, a place to share stories, talk about struggles, successes, and find other people who do the same thing that I do. Welcome to Working in Yoga, a podcast and substitute water cooler for yoga folks to connect and build community, to share our unique profession, our challenges, and our journeys with the world.
Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. This week on the podcast, I have Kimberly Searl coming in with some seriously thoughtful takes on our usage of AI and tech in the yoga space. While most guests in this series have truly a pro-AI and tech point of view, I think Kimberly strikes a really thoughtful balance between what AI can be useful for and where we're falling short with our use in tech. This, to me, is the entire point of this series, offering you all, the listeners, the opportunity to hear several viewpoints on a topic that is relevant to us as an industry, and then work through your own thoughts on that topic. As I've been mentioning, we do have a discussion guide available for this series, so go ahead and snag it at www.workinginyoga.com/discussion guide, all one word. Also, inspired by this talk with Kimberly, I'm working with some others on best practices for us as an industry on the usage of AI and tech. So look out for a blog on this topic coming shortly, and don't hesitate to reach out and contribute to the conversation. You can email me at rebecca@workinginyoga.com. And while I am on the request train, if you're not already subscribing to the podcast, it truly would mean so much if you did. And if you aren't on my email list, head to the show notes and pop on that too. The newsletter is where you get the latest on my discussions and writings, and we get to have a conversation together, which I feel like many of y'all know is truly one of my very favorite things. And finally, okay, this is a fun one. Will you tell me a funny story? Pretty please? I'm collecting some of our funniest stories from teaching yoga to share with you all on the podcast. Let's admit it, we sometimes have a weird and very funny job. Have I told you the one about working at a retirement facility where a custodian walked in during Shavasana? And the gasp that he made, y'all. Well, I'll tell you during the podcast episode. So head to the show notes, find the SpeakPipe link, and send me a funny story. Now, let's get into it with Kimberly Searl. Hey friends, welcome to Working in Yoga. Okay, this is another one of our chats about AI and tech in the yoga space, which I'm so nerding out on right now. It's so much fun. Welcome to the podcast, my new friend, Kimberly Searl. Kimberly, will you tell everybody who you are and what you do?
Hi, I am Kimberly Searl. I have a Master's of Science in Yoga Therapy from Maryland University of Integrative Health, which is soon to be NDMU. I got into yoga therapy because I had a horseback riding accident. And if you want to know about all that stuff, you can watch my TED Talk that I did about 5 years ago. But, I really am into therapeutic movement because I needed it for myself to heal. So I teach yoga therapy and classical Pilates. I also teach it to universities and graduate level courses. And I'm so passionate about educating people about complementary integrative health and how it can support us and be integrated with our allopathic practitioners. I've been doing it about 20 years now. I'm a Midwest Great Lakes girl. I'm kind of just a country girl that grew up on a farm. And, I just love to support people and guide people through healing. And so that's a little bit about me.
Saying before we hit record, I'm really thrilled to find people who are thinking about tech and yoga in our space who also have deep practices in there. We're teaching people in person. We're doing all the things that we've done for the last, how many ever years that yoga has been here in the West. But okay, when I put the call out on Facebook to talk about AI and tech. You responded, and I was like, okay, I know she's got some good stuff today to say. So let's get into it. First, I want to hear first impressions. Like, we are on the forefront of AI. It's just really come into like cultural understanding in the last like year and a half. Like, what are your first impressions? What do you like? What do you not like?
My first impressions is, like, let me preface this, I'm in my 50s. So, I could be like the old lady of tech, because, and I don't have kids to like teach me the new things. But what I was really surprised by is, I'm kind of in the pool with my friend, kind of belly aching about being a small business owner and all that entails. And she said, you're going to have to start create marketing plans on why you're different from AI. And that really like just stopped me like dead in my tracks. And I thought, never in my lifetime did I anticipate that I would need to make marketing campaigns on how I can work in harmony with AI. So, how do we start to talk about that? Because there are pros and cons.
Yeah, I mean, I love this concept of us having to really think about marketing ourselves differently than AI, because this is something I've posited on every recording I've done of this series so far. There is nothing stopping someone from feeding a chat GPT, say, the entire catalog of Yoga with Adrienne and saying, build me a YouTube channel with a person who kind of looks like her, maybe kind of has her voice, that has a similar style of teaching to Yoga with Adrienne. And there's no reason to think that that YouTube channel wouldn't be a significant competitor in the online space. Like, we have to be thinking
Well,
about that.
yeah, I agree 100%. So I had some difficulties last fall, and one of my mentors suggested that I read this book, The Anxious Generation. And I thought he had some interesting points in that book. One, around 2010-ish, I started talking with my studio of clients and saying like, hey, we're losing civility. Well, he pointed out like around 2010 is when that front facing phone came out. It was our first thing. And right around that, so maybe 3 years later, I started having clients coming in going, look how slow this person moves down from headstand or shoulder stand. Like, why can't I do that? And I started thinking, like, I've met that person in person. They are pretty strong, but how are they doing that? And then I realized, oh, they were slowing video down before they posted on social media. Now go forward to, 10 years now, but now we have AI, and I have clients going, well, I want to be able to do this. And I look at it and I go, I think that's AI generated. Like, I'm not sure your body needs to do that. Like, what's the functional goal on why you want to do that? Or I have some come in and say, like, oh, I hurt my knee, but, I saw on social media that all the military guys are using this. And I'm like, okay, well, what's that source? And it's almost like we need to start to find the videos that are less curated to find the true work and to look for that. And it can, like you and I live a public figure, they could take our voices and put it into something and people would think that it's us. And so, there's pros and cons to this to think about.
Are you discerning between what you're seeing on screen and what feels practical for real life? Because, oh my gosh, you've made such an important point here. Like, your people are slowing those videos down. They are editing those videos. There's like, we know filters, but really, let's talk filters. Like, babe, her butt did not look like that when she was in her tiny little thing on the beach, right? Like, that's a filter.
Right. Yeah.
Like, how are you discerning that?
I mean, I'm not sure, but I'm an expert on that yet. I think it's like, it kind of like when we look for research, right? There are certain things that we want to look for to make sure that it's quality research. And I think it's the same thing with the AI. We know AIs can hallucinate. You can look at proportions of the body, listen to the tone if it's too monotone. Um, Too highly organized too. Like I notice, it's
Yeah.
like hyper organized. So those are the things that I look for and that I try to, educate my clients to look at. And again, to ask like, because as yoga therapists, we're taught to respect the life cycle of the body, of the human being. And throughout that life cycle, risk and reward changes. And so, again, asking yourself, like, what is that risk you're about to do in performing that asana or whatever it is? And then what's the reward? And is that necessary, right? When you look at that balance.
Yeah. Okay, so let's first talk marketing here. Like, how are we going to compete marketing wise? Because AI does do some great stuff for us in marketing. Like,
Mhm.
it can write your plan for you and you can adjust it, it can help you research. But now people are using it to do all of their marketing. How do we
Yeah.
compete?
Well, I think first you have to think about what sets us apart from AI. And I think that's our human connection, right? Our humanness, our ability to do critical thinking, and then our intuition and adaptability, right? Because we can sometimes think like, okay, clients coming in, we kind of have some medical history and stuff, and we have some thoughts formulating in our head. But once we see them in person, we're like, ooh, okay, we need to adapt, to do this. Also, personalized touch. So whether we're working, I work hybrid, right? My clients flex back and forth between telehealth and in person, and sometimes having that human touch, especially since more people are working from home, coming to see you is starting to have a greater value. Creative problem solving, right? We can, you know, think about our lived experience, our wisdom, our education, and we can come up with that creative experience, experience, which I just said, and then ethical philosophy and guidance. So, then I wonder, well, like, okay, so that's how I'm different from AI. Now, how can I
Yeah.
harmonize and work together, right?
Yeah.
How can I think of them as, my coworker that I want to work with versus the coworker that I'm like, ooh, run away. And I think that's getting them to leverage administration tasks. Like, I don't know about you, but it's my least favorite thing to do because I'm passionate about
Yes.
the human being and therapeutic movement, not about admin and spreadsheets. And
Oh my
oh,
God.
I hate that. My stress level goes up. Um, Enhancing my knowledge. So, if I want to, I'm really into loneliness as a disease condition. So I'll ask it, like, who are the top researchers in loneliness? And it can tell me that, right? And then I'll go and look to see, like, are they really a legitimate researcher? Is this legitimate research? So I have to do that. Just expanding my reach for marketing. I live in a really small town that keeps getting smaller. And so a lot of business owners here, we've had to start to reach out of our state. And so perhaps it can help me put marketing plans together that can target a wider geographic
Yeah.
area. And then offering what AI can't, like, going back to my humanity, sharing my health hiccups and how the integrative health toolkit that I have has supported me. Because I don't think AI is ever going to be able to tell us interoception, proprioception, kind of that lived
Yeah.
feeling in our body. And it can help me educate. I'm toying around with getting a PhD, and I've asked it, some things of like, we hear people coming out, they're by the time they're done with their PhD, like what they went to school for is now no longer relevant. And so I've
Yeah.
kind of been playing around with AI a little bit of like, hey, here's my passion. I have this master's in yoga therapy. I'm a science nerd. Like, what is going to still be around, with how things are changing and kind of using it that way. So, I guess if I had to sum up that collaboration, it's like online content, maybe helping fill in some gaps so that I could be around for my clients 24/7 without actually being physically there. And, just offering some support through that behind the scenes stuff.
Can I switch topics just briefly into
Mhm.
loneliness for a second?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Let's talk.
Oh, look. Okay, I know you can't see it, but that's my favorite thing also, we're both closer to the camera.
Yeah, we're both sort of
I
like, yes.
yeah, like, I too am really like, it's something that I research, and it's part of like, so as you know, I'm also a yoga therapist, and a lot of what I do with women is care work, right? Like how they can deeply care for themselves. And I think we really have to talk about loneliness. Do you feel like AI has like a place in that conversation? Because sometimes I do. Like, I know people who are just like, I can't say this to a real person, and I'm chatting with ChatGPT. Do you feel like it has a spot in that conversation?
One would think yes. Like the immediate knee jerk is this AI has empathy and compassion, and it's mirroring back what I
Yeah.
want to hear. But we know when we read research, because we're in this huge mental health crisis, and we've been kind of decreasing the funding that we spend on mental health since 1989. I think that was the Reagan era. And it's not getting better, it's getting worse. So, mental health, because it has such a crisis, I think the last statistic I saw was on average 26% of Americans are diagnosed with a mental health condition. That's 88 million plus people. That's a lot of people. So they've been kind of playing around with AI, and even with a psychologist and doctors kind of, helping build this AI, sometimes that AI sends them further into their disease condition. Again, because it can't feel what that person feels, it can't really see what's happening in that body language. It doesn't have that lived wisdom. So, in the immediate is like, oh yeah, it will help with loneliness, but is it going to make you more lonely? And is that isolation with this bot, which would, might be a marketing bot turned therapy bot, is that creating more loneliness? And loneliness,
Yeah.
they say is as painful as a broken bone, and broken bones are pretty painful. It's high on the pain
Yeah.
scale.
I mean, okay, so I feel like we've gotten ourselves in a pickle here. Like if we want to
Okay.
like dive deep into this like human interaction aspect of tech and AI, which actually I think is perfect for yoga because we trade in human interaction, right? We trade in human
Mhm.
experience. Is that like so what we see, and I'm 46, I have two children, is that my oldest is 16, and what I saw when he was young was this trend that happened with kids where when you were out and kids were 2, 3, 4 years old, and you wanted them to behave at a restaurant, or you wanted them to behave at a concert, or you wanted them to behave in a particular scenario, we gave them tech. Now, I always had a huge objection to it, and so people always thought it was like a weird mom for not doing that. But what I'm seeing now is that we taught a generation of kids to regulate their nervous systems off of tech. And now they will be adults. Excuse me. Now they're going to be adults who have to learn how to regulate off of other human beings. And our expectation is that they're going to trust me more than they trust the tech that I gave them to like deal with their discomfort when they were little. Feel like I'm worried about that.
Yeah, so that brings up a couple points for me. And I talk about this with other service practitioners over the last year. Is I'm worried that, let's say, anyone younger than 40 perhaps isn't going to value the humanness of our service because they're so tech driven,
Yeah.
and they're more into apps. So a lot of us are talking about the fact that the clients that support our passion are aging out of our services, right? Because the life cycle is
Yes.
ending. And the younger generations aren't valuing that. They're more into apps, and not, they don't really understand the value of the difference of that.
Yeah.
And, as a professor, I also see more AI um, assignments sent to me. And, my husband and I talk about this a lot. Is the AI in healthcare, in academia, reducing critical thinking? And do you want the AI doctor, the student that used AI to get all the way through, let's say, for example, med school, working on you? As robotic surgery and stuff was coming out, I was always like, hey, I'm all for it because, it's less invasive. But, if the grid
Yeah.
goes down, I hope my doc knows how to do it old school, right? And so it's kind of the same thing with this AI education, is how is that changing the brain? And we know the more tech or more social media, the more anxious the person is. We've got
Yeah.
tons of data on this. And so how is that going to change? the future for our profession.
Yeah. How do you think it is?
I I don't really think it's going in the direction I want it to go in.
Me either. I'm worried about us. Like sincerely, I'm worried about us.
I'm really worried that it is driving mental health dysregulation further down that rabbit hole or down that pothole. And what I worry about is, will I have enough interest in me, in my service that I offer, to ride out the 4 to 6 years that it takes for people to realize that I'm still relevant?
Ooh, good question.
We're expected to lose so many jobs from AI and the tens of thousands. Now, we've gone through the industrial area. We've seen this before, but we've never seen it come at such a rapid pace. And
Yes.
it's the rapid pace that I worry that we won't be able to absorb fast enough into re-education to other services.
Yeah, I mean, truly, what will be doing? Like, how will we be able to, I mean, how will we be able to support ourselves? And you're right. Like, tell me, you said, can I survive the 4 to 6 year life cycle that is somebody realizing that they need me and not the Calm app, say, or,
Mhm.
something like that. Like, are there things you think we can be doing now to talk in a language that can get people to us faster?
Well, I mean, I've always been a big proponent of education. Education, education, education. I think when we educate people, it reduces the shame, the guilt, the blame, the anger, the violence.
Yeah.
Um, but for example, in my state, I just had an educator share with me that during COVID, we lost, over 180,000 kids that we can't account for out of the school system. And so then you wonder, like, what's happening to their education? And if we put that across the entire United States, again, what's
Yeah.
happening with that? And, I think that coupled with the, discrepancies in what we believe in AI could really compound things. And I don't know where to go, but I think we have to start talking about it. I think we have to start talking about some best practices. Um, you know, I I probably need to come up with some sort of tip sheet for my clients, but again, it's changing so much that I'm not even sure where to go with that. Um, but I don't think that we can drop the conversation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so let's talk. First of all, ironically, my brain said you were like, I should come up with a tip sheet. And I was like, I bet ChatGPT could do that for you.
I'm
So,
sure it could. I'm sure it could. So here's how I can I think what you're asking is, like, how can we reframe our value with yoga therapy, with AI,
yes,
right? In yoga
yes,
therapy. And I think
yes,
that's by talking about how powerful it is to have a lived embodiment. So salutogenesis, eudaimonia, like all those things that we've learned about. How can we take the evidence, because AI wins in evidence to inform, but how can we take that and couple that with our wisdom? And then from that, have this therapeutic presence, this healing power of connection, kind of like you and I are doing, right?
yeah,
Tech has brought
yeah,
us together, um, from different states. And then how can we guide that into the mind body spirit world? And, in America, yoga was miscategorized as religion for a long time because we don't talk about philosophy in our culture, but it is
yeah,
philosophy, and it's a healing philosophy that has, centuries of wisdom in it. There's power in that. And those
yeah.
that was passed down by humans with that lived experience, with that embodiment. So how can we, you know, still have that and work with the AI? Like, we have to think about that integration. Um, because there are things that, we need to worry about, like privacy and ethics and all that kind of stuff.
Want us, like, one of the things that I think this conversation really has highlighted for me is the need for us to go deeper than we've gone before publicly. Like it's always been a conversation amongst us, like yoga folks. When we're behind the scenes, we're talking philosophy. When we're behind the scenes, we're talking about human connection. But publicly, we're like, your shoulders will feel better. Like, and I think it's like AI is going to replace alignment. AI can do it better than we can do it. Like it's going to replace all that like surface level stuff we have been kind of trading on for like the last 20 years or so. And we've got to go
Mhm.
deeper, I think.
Yeah, because some of my clients say, well, Kim, you're always going to be around because, who's going to tell us that our alignment's off and that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, well, if we look at the athletic uh, uh, piece of the pie here, professional athletes, they already have AIs that are looking at their
Yes.
stance, adjusting
Yes.
angles. They can already predict the injuries that they're going to have and what they need to do. So we know that the affordability, right, as that becomes more affordable, that's going to trickle right down. And so, no longer will we be like, notice that, in this pose, your one arm's here and one arm's
Yeah.
here, right?
Yeah.
So, so,
Yeah.
that's going to change. And, because we like these deep conversations, my husband's always like, oh God, we just met them. Why are you asking like a deep question? But
Me
I
too, all
find,
the time.
I find those conversations comforting, but, not everyone does. And things like information comes at us so fast, right? And we have to process and keep up that I feel like we're living superficially, and
Yeah.
we're too much in our head, which disconnects from the body, and we really need to slow things down. Slow down. Slow down how fast we're teaching people things. Slow down the amount of time that we're asking them to do personal practices. I mean, really, people can only do like 3 minutes. 15 minutes is a lot now, and
Yeah.
we have to, kind of build that up. At the same time, in our industry, I hate to say it, but I've been saying, well, I shouldn't say I hate to say it. I've been saying it 7 years. I've been on this soapbox of, kind of that yoga instructor at the top of the room. It's kind of like a little pyramid thing. I'm entertained. It's a brand. It's not what
Yeah.
true yoga is about. It's not yoga philosophy. It's more consumerism and more entertainment. And is that serving people? It's like, I'm only healthy if I'm with that person. Where I want to make independent clients, I want to teach you a lifestyle medicine routine, and I want you to have ownership of that. Life changes, come back and see me when life changes or you're bored. Let's go back to you and make it about you, and really get deep in there. And let's start working on this epigenetic stuff.
Yeah. I mean, we have so much to offer. Like, I'm like weirdly passionate about us and our profession. Like, we're offering so much. We do such good work. And I do think we have a place in this like new frontier that is inevitably being built through tech and AI. Like you said, I mean, you're right. Everybody's right. We're going to lose and shift and change how we work so dramatically in the next 10 to 20 years. You know, we'll revisit this conversation 5 years from now. And I feel like you and I could be here going like, oh my gosh, we didn't even see that coming, how we're going to change.
Exactly.
But okay, what do you think is going to go in our industry? And let's do yoga teaching and yoga therapy. And what do you think? I think we've covered a little bit about what you think is going to stay, like what you think we do best, because I agree with you. It's that human connection,
Mhm.
that idea that we're going to help people have embodied experiences as we get more and more and more disembodied. I think that will be more and more important. But what are we going to lose? What's going to go away?
Well, I think in the short term, like as a business owner, I'm like, can I still keep my physical space?
Totally.
I mean, it's over 50 grand to keep it running. And then what's left is what I get to live on, which isn't, I'm poor. I'm poor.
Who
There's
isn't in this
nothing going
industry?
there, right?
Yeah.
We all are. And I think people don't realize that there's a very small profit margin if you're making that at all. You know, uh, 10 years ago, I hired a business coach that said, hey, if you make a 10% past your expenses, it's a win, right? Which isn't a lot, right?
Okay.
And we think about
No.
like how much I think about. I have an accountant that sets my rates, right? A lot of people just think I pick something out of the air, but that's not the case. And in 2022, she told me to raise my rates, and I haven't. But think about how much has changed from 2022 to 2025. And as a small business owner, the environment is taking these large swings, and I'm out of pivot money. I'm behind in retirement. Things aren't going well for me
Yeah.
financially. So and I've talked to many yoga therapists across the nation where their numbers are way down. So again,
Yeah.
when I'm saying like this is very real stuff, we all pay six figures or more for our education. We've all sacrificed for that. We have the debt of education.
Yes.
We aren't trying to be rich. We're trying to survive. And it would be nice if we were a little over the edge of survive to be a little bit in thriving, because we know how that changes our nervous system and our
Mm.
health. And so I think that is, a very real thing that we're going to see. And then, so as studios, like pre-pandemic, if I had a training at my studio, I calculated that we brought in, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars to my little community that no longer is there, because each priest, let's say I had a group of 20 people come in that month, each of those people needed to fly here or drive, right? So gas or plane. They ate, they stayed in hotels, they went and bought things around the gift shop. All of that adds up into tens of thousands of dollars. I think I used to bring into my community through those. I calculated 1 year in the six figures, like $150,000 that I'd bring in from my trainings into the studio. Now, I didn't
Yeah.
pocket that, but that was spread out through their travel in my community. That has now vanished because we've all gone to more of an electronic thing. So I feel like, am I going to be forced back into, working in a bedroom, turning a bedroom into a smaller studio to curate that? I also see people wanting us to put out tons of free content on all this social media. But I don't know about you, it's like a machine that's never satisfied, that never has a return back to
Yeah.
me. And it's
Nope.
super draining. But yet, if I don't have a present, I'm not legitimate, right? Because what
Yeah.
you interview for a job, or a client looks for you, what it's the first thing they do is they go look for that. So again, I think that's educating people, like, is that really valuable content? Right? Because it's draining
Yep.
me, and it's like a bucket with a hole. And so how much time do I want to put into that? And I think
Yeah.
we've seen, like, some of our peers, I'm like, how are they generating so much content out there? And it's just AI, right? Generating that.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think you're right here. We have to like shift expectations a little bit. Like the thing that I think is really fascinating is that when I go into like both yoga teaching, but especially yoga therapy spaces, and the question that seems to be asked a lot now is how are we pitching to corporations and medical practitioners? And I've been really lucky in my area that I have relationships in both of those places. And
Mhm.
I'm always like, yeah, when you send that email to whatever corporation that you want to partner with, put a link to a private YouTube video that's going to show them who you are as a teacher or yoga therapist. And people go, yeah, but I always hate to give away free content. And I was like, have you looked at your social media? Like you're doing it all the time. Don't do
Yeah.
it there. Do it somewhere skillfully. Like put it in an email that will make you money versus, I mean, the expectation is that we're supposed to be putting out free content on, YouTube and wherever else all the time.
Yeah, no, so I have a question for you. When I first started out 20 years ago, I made a prescription pad. I went around to different doctors' offices. I had like a little letter with a CV, and
Yeah.
I had an example of a prescription pad. And that's really what got me started. Was I had 3 to 5 docs in my area that took a chance and believed in me and would
Yep.
refer clients. Post-pandemic, a lot of them have retired. They're kind of done, and medicine has
Yeah,
changed so much.
sure.
And the younger docs, I'm having difficulty creating a relationship because they're like, why would my client pay that when they can get an app for your hourly rate? They can have an app for the whole year. I even talked to a researcher that was like, well, if you can help me design and put yoga therapy into an app so that it's phone based, so that when they're in my office, they can download, we can take, information from them, and then they can go back to their house and work through the app. I love the accessibility of that, but I don't know how we do that because we're so human centered and meeting people where they are. It's like asking us to write a prescription or a protocol for a certain disease condition. You know, Western medicine isn't working, right? There's a lot of problems. Do we want
Yep.
to take the rich value of what we do and put it into a system that we know doesn't work? That seems like insanity to me.
Yes.
But yet, to get people to come and meet in the middle to problem solve here, right now, it's my biggest obstacle.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. Like, first of all, I have to say, I just had this conversation like 17 hours ago with somebody who's involved in one of our organizations where we were just like, is it useful for us to put ourselves in a model that doesn't work? Like, and if we do choose to do that, what do we get out of it? You know, like is the results enough to satisfy us? And I think we're a group of high-minded individuals as a collective. So I think probably not. You know, like like integrity is something that I think is core to so many of us with what we do, that probably the results of making ourselves shove into that box doesn't work. I
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I will say in partnering with younger doctors, raising my prices is much more effective. Like even I get so much less pushback now that I'm nearly $200 an hour than I ever did when I was 70 to $100 an hour. And I find it really fascinating, but that's
That's
absolutely
interesting.
true. Is that the more I cost, the more their perceived value of my work is.
That
Um,
they respect it.
Yes, and I also have found that the newer, like, up and coming, like, medical practitioners appreciate a much less formal approach than, like, the old school approaches that we did. Because you know, you and I have been in industry, I think, a similar amount of time. I've been a I trained as a yoga therapist in 2010, right? So I've been here for a while.
Right.
And, like, making those partnerships, you're right, in the teens, frankly, doing anything in yoga in the teens was easy. Like, there was so much work for us.
Yeah.
And, like those friendships, stayed and formed. And now there's two things that work. I tell all new medical practitioners that I see to give me their weirdest and most non-compliant people. I'm like,
Mm.
I want you to send to me the people you hate working with, and we'll figure out how to get their HSAs to pay for the services at my place, right? Whether it's
Right.
that their HSA needs a prescription from them or whatever else, we'll figure it out. But the first thing I always say is, "Give me your weirdest people," because most of the time, the weirdest people are the people who are actually having a meaning and purpose crisis, and we are so good at that, that it's just
Mhm.
like, we have so much content to support people who are having challenges in meaning and purpose and people who are having nervous system downregulation challenges. There's nothing anybody else does that beats what we do.
I love that because, like let's just say your primary care physician, kind of the gatekeeper to all of that. They get to spend 13 to 16 minutes. Us not being regulated by insurance can spend an hour to 90 minutes with that person. We collect so much data that can then be sent back in an integrative assessment, either through the patient or through proper channels with us. Um, and we can really get to the meat of some things and to see patterns that they just can't see anymore. And, like we started off kind of talking about mental health. Is that primary care physician within the 13 to 16 minutes able to properly diagnose mental health or offer, um, you know, solutions for that?
Yeah.
It, we don't fix or diagnose, right? We don't have diagnostic
Yeah.
skills. But I was at a conference recently, and a doctor, she specialized in female health, and I thought she explained it the best. She said, if I train my staff to find these 12 disease conditions within the low to moderate range, she's like, because if we can catch it in the low, I prescribe 8 to 12 yoga therapy sessions, and I know they're going to be fine. If we catch it at the moderate range, now I have to prescribe a short-term pharmaceutical and she does 12 to 24 sessions of yoga therapy at that point. But she says, I have a very candid conversation that this pharmaceutical I'm prescribing is short term. They need to learn the tools through yoga therapy. She goes, now, if it gets to the acute stage, yoga therapy doesn't work. Now we're seeing specialists, surgeons, so on and so forth, which I agree. I
Yeah.
think we'd all agree that yoga therapy, you got to learn
Yes.
it before you get to the acute for it to help you in the acute stage. And so I thought, that she just described that so well. And I really valued hearing
Yeah.
that come from the allopathic world, the view of that.
Yeah. I think in dovetailing this back into AI and tech, compliance is something that AI will never compete with. And part of it is because we already know that half of the medical practitioners that people are seeing are
Hmm.
half robot anyway, which I mean, you're lovely and you're healing people but you see, as you said, a GP gets 13 minutes. You have no choice
Hmm.
but to be as quick and efficient as possible to get through everything you need. And I mean, it's really
You know,
difficult to oh, go ahead.
AI is the resource, right? But we're the mentor, we're the guide,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
has to, where it has to be a resource. Your doctor is a resource, but you still have to help yourself, right? They
Yep.
can't do it all for you. And I think that that's where some similarities between these two or three, if you even want to say it's a triangle, the complementary integrative medicine, the allopathic methods, and AI, like, I think that's how we can start to harmonize together is to look at
Yeah.
AI as a resource, but that human touch, that somatic awareness, that customization, that guiding you through emotional and energetic challenges, right? Like you
Yes,
still need a human for that. And it takes
you do.
time.
I think, it's one of the things I told the story a couple times on this podcast of like I had a whole slew of humans who were referred to me because of overuse of their Pelotons. And they had gone to, 6 or 7 different practitioners before they found one particular practitioner who's a direct referral to me. And the arrangement between she and I is I was like, send me your weirdest people. And
Mm-hmm.
so one summer she sent me a bunch of people who had challenges with overuse of their Peloton. And the fact is that because we have more time, space, and the ability to connect with people, and in fact, we're trained in the skill of connecting with people. I think it blew me away. They'd be sitting in front of me, and I was the first person who was like, that's a weird choice to make. Why are you on your Peloton for 3 to 4 hours a day? What's with that? And,
Yeah.
we would go from there. And, most likely, in fact, in all the cases, it was what we would consider to be, sort of that meaning and purpose sort of kosha challenge,
Mm-hmm.
right? That we're very good at addressing. And I was like, so did nobody ever ask you this before? Like, nobody was like, what's with that?
But what I hear most from my clients is while I felt listened to, I felt heard, you asked questions and looked at me in a way that no one's ever
Yeah.
seen me. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that has a lot of value. I mean, just showing up, where can you show up and get, 55 minutes of undivided attention to you and your
Yeah.
needs? That has a lot of value.
Yeah. More value potentially in the next 10 years than the previous. So, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah,
as
yeah.
more time and attention is outsourced to a non-human thing, actually what we do has even more value. Oh my God. How do we
Did we just like, how did we go
like
from like,
we cracked the code? I mean,
maybe?
I mean, it is then it becomes the question of like accessibility and how we can get our services to more and more people. And that's a game that we can talk around for
Mhm,
hours. But like really, if our general lives are now being outsourced to something non-human, the
mhm.
deep human connection that we offer would be of more value, would it not?
Yes, I absolutely agree with that. I just don't know how long that's going to take for people for the consensus like to swing that
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
I think the only way that I can do that is through education at this point. Like, because I think of like what's in my window of control. And while I'm waiting for people to realize what you and I, have swung around to
Yeah.
realize, right, that we do have value, that value is important. How long does it take others to come around to that? You and I are in the industry. It took us maybe an hour, 45 minutes, right? but is that going to be in years, and what will we look like during that time?
Yeah. I mean, ooh, there's the question right there. What will we look like during that time? Because and again, when I say I'm worried about us, I mean I'm worried about us as a specific industry. I'm also worried about humanity in general, of course, but
Hmm.
as a specific industry, I mean, I have a hard time not thinking that this won't end up being like a second COVID of sorts, where you see the industry burn 60% gone, and I mean, in the COVID days, gosh, it was like 60% gone in a matter of, 18 months.
Yeah, I lost 54% of my business during COVID.
Yeah, I mean,
Right?
yeah,
I'm still here. I don't know how I am, but I
I
am
feel the
still
same way.
here.
Yeah.
I hustled, and I sometimes I feel like I'm still hustling, but you know,
Yeah.
thank God for the people that support my passion and
Yeah.
believed in me and my service, because that's really why I'm here, right? People
I
voting with
mean,
their dollars.
I do think I don't know if I wanna say that this is a benefit or not, but it is a result as a result, and I do think we saw this in COVID. I think we're gonna see this again over the next 10 years, is that a lot of folks who are, for lack of a better term, looky-loos, people who are not in this for the long haul, I can't tell you how many times I've tried to quit this stupid job. So many, Kimberly, so many. But yet I'm here because this just seems to be this thing that I'm very passionate about. Like, those of us who aren't in it like that, I think aren't gonna be here 5 years from now, 10 years from now, for sure, as it gets
Yeah,
hard.
I mean, I laugh because I think as a small business owner, some days you're like, "That's it, I'm out, I'm done." But then the universe sends
All
me
the
like
time.
6 new wonderful clients that I'm like, "Ooh, a puzzle. Let's see what we can do." I'm so
Yeah,
excited about
yeah,
this, right? Because like you said, give me your problem children. It's like, ooh, that like we get excited about that.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, like you're still here, you're still plugging away, you're still enjoying the work, you're still growing, and
yeah,
but it is a sacrifice, yeah. And so like
yeah,
you said, the looky loos might not be able to ride that out, and the work that comes with it, the work and dedication, really, because
yeah.
it is a life passion, right?
Yeah, it is very, very much that. Yeah, it is. That's funny that you say that when you're looking at your business going, someday I'm out. Like, I think I have that process in this business. I don't know, like once a month. I'm just like, this is stupid and I'm failing and I hate everything. I'm just gonna go sell feet pics on the internet and fine.
My love language is words of affirmation, and I always tell people the highest compliment you can give me is a referral and to sign up for your next session, right? That has meaning to me. And sometimes people will write me little love notes. And I had a client one time, she was in academia, and she said, when a student writes me a love note, I keep it. And on those hard days, I go back and read the comments in that box. And so I'll keep the little handwritten notes and I put them in my yoga books. And so then when I'm doing research for a client, I stumble upon that and I read it and I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, this is why I'm here.
Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I think it's actually a very healthy practice because I think the thing we don't say enough is that in this whole experience of being a yoga professional, and we're all then inevitably business owners, even though some of us did not sign up for that experience, like it just comes part and parcel with what we do, that you
Hmm.
have to save those little nuggets so that you can get through because there will always be a time when you're like, I'm out.
Well, you have to take care of yourself because, people come to us and while we're excited to see these complex cases, um, there's a lot of negativity in that. And you're hearing a
Yeah.
lot of things people don't want. And so when you get that little love note from a client, it's like, oh, you got to hear the
Yeah.
positive and the outcome and how it affected the ripple of like their whole family and friend group. And, that is, I think, where we get that re energizing. Plus, having our own yoga therapist, to
Mm.
help support us. And, I keep my own little integrative professionals on because I can't assess myself. I pick up quirks. And so, you need to get your own self-care so that you can continue to walk the talk.
Yeah. Okay, let's do one final riff off of AI, and that is,
Mhm.
where do you see this most definitely affecting our industry 10 years from now, 20 years from now? What do you think is going to be the biggest impact that we will take as an industry as a result of tech and AI?
Well, I want to say okay, so this is where I think the future of AI and yoga therapy is going to go. But I think we have to create some guidelines for ethical use. Like I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
that's really important. So I think we have to understand salutogenesis and eudaimonia. Kind of like that true well-being requires that human connectedness and that meaning making that the AI can't do. I think we have to define boundaries. That's I think that essential for how we delineate ourselves from AI. So it can be a supportive tool, but yet the yoga therapist, right, has that interdisciplinariness to make it personalized and empathetic. I think we also have to look at the sustainability of our profession. The profession has to consider the strategies to maintain its integrity, its viability during this period. And it may take for the public to recognize the limitations of AI in therapeutic context. And I think our governing body, AOIT, needs to stand up and help us fight that fight.
Yes. I mean, y'all can't see that, but I was like quietly applauding. She's talking. Like, for real though, we really have to fight the
Like I got
fight.
chills saying that. Like I have goosebumps
Yeah,
because it's that important.
it is that important. Like, yes, best practices, all the things. And what drives me nuts is that, I mean, one of the many things that drives me nuts about my bad boyfriend that is the yoga organizations that I keep coming back to is like they should be building best practices for us about this. I shouldn't be the first person on the scene talking about this. It should be them going, "Hey, we're already seeing this coming our way. Hey, this is what we're seeing is like this is how AI is going to affect us. This is what best practices within the industry are going to be." Like we shouldn't be building that. But very likely, based on how things that have been in the past, is that someday at 10 p.m., I'm going to get a wild hair and I'm going to email you, Kim, and I'm going to be like, hey,
Can
let's
we start
build
having
best
Zoom coffees?
practices. Someone should build best practices. Like, do you know nobody's built online teaching best practices except Jivana Heyman through Accessible Yoga? Jivana was the only one who did it. It's like, insanity that is that
It
this
is,
human running a nonprofit.
the cart before the horse, right? And that's what I'm
Yes.
talking about. Just because we have this information coming at us and AI can do something like this, we got to slow down because it's
Yeah.
driving us down a path too fast. And we've got to start to build a foundation for what's coming.
Yeah. Will you tell everybody how to find you and like fangirl out on you and your content?
I really love working one-on-one with clients, and I love mentoring new young yoga therapists coming up. I didn't get the gift of children, so that's kind of how I like to nurture other people. You can find me at www.ism.health, and you can find all things Kimberly Searl there. I'm on social media as well as kim.searl. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Integrative Sustainable Movement for my YouTube. And watch that TED Talk. We still need to get that out there.
Yes. Thank you so much for having this conversation, Kimberly. Like, this was really good. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You made my day.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Kimberly. Here are our key takeaways. First, how do we discern what's real and what's not? This is a huge question, and we need to unpack it. Especially as we look at marketing and online representations of yoga in our field, what benchmarks are you using to tell AI generated content from not? If you've never thought about it, maybe start paying attention to what you're seeing and have some mental guidelines for your online consumption of yoga content, and honestly, just content in general. Next, is the life cycle of our services ending? How do we speak to a new generation of people? I've joked more than once that yoga teacher training is a thing that millennials did, and that's really true, let's be honest. So how do we make ourselves relevant to a new generation of people who are all more tech savvy and also expect us to answer the need for real life to exist in two spaces, both IRL and online? The answer to this question is going to define our future, my friends, so let's talk about it. Next, Kimberly's quote, "Will I have enough interest in the service I offer to ride out the 4 to 6 years that it will take for people to realize I'm still relevant?" This is the question of the hour. There is no doubt in my mind that what we offer, the human connection we cultivate, is vital to our existence. But how many of us will be left by the time this realization reaches mainstream consciousness? Next, we need to come up with solutions now for how we're going to work in the future. Financially, how we're working now isn't acceptable for so many reasons. Too many people in our industry are stuck in the 2010s, where it was easy to make money because we were the new, trendy, hot commodity on the wellness market. Well, guess what? We're not that anymore. So now what you got? Are we ready to stand up and shift our profession? Or are we going to prove ourselves to be just a fad? Honestly, I love us. Like, really, I love us, and I want us to thrive. And in order to do that, I think conversations about this are beyond necessary. Next, can we agree that there needs to be some kind of shifting in our internal expectations around marketing and social media? Because Kimberly's right. The most prolific people posting on social media are using AI, which gives the rest of us an unrealistic expectation of what we're supposed to do. Or, even worse, it uses bait and switch techniques in order to get people in the door. In fact, I was trained many years ago to use a version of bait and switch marketing when I was a budding yoga therapist. What I mean by that is I was told not to talk about the philosophy and lifestyle principles of yoga when I marketed myself, just to tell people that we were moving. But when they came in, I was going to sneak it up behind them and say, hey, but also we have this philosophical principle. But let me tell you, we can do it differently. But we need to be realistic about that and how we're going to show up in our marketing online. And seriously, this is just an aside, but dear God, have a private link for free content to get jobs. I can't say this enough. If you're applying for a job or a contract, have a link to a private video on YouTube that demonstrates who you are as a yoga teacher or yoga therapist. Let's normalize having this with every single touch point that we have for new jobs. Please, please, please send them demos so they can tell the difference between teachers that are really professional and teachers who are not. Please. Next, what is your relationship with the apps? I really want to know what you're thinking about in regards to apps like Calm and Insight Timer. Do you love them? Do you find them a benefit for your students and clients? Do you find them competition? Seriously, I want to know, so don't hesitate to tell me. I started this conversation this week in the Facebook group I run, The Future of Yoga Therapy, so join us and be part of the conversation. And finally, why do we not have standard best practices? Dear God, if there's anything our orgs could be doing, it would be to build best practices. Literally, what are you guys doing? I'm just saying. But since they aren't doing it, I think I will. So again, email rebecca@workinginyoga.com if you want to contribute to the discussion. Next time on the podcast, I'm talking to Melissa Calasanz about AI and intellectual property. Remember, AI is mining everything we put online, so we need a discussion about how we protect ourselves and our ideas in this new version of our online world. Until then, thanks for listening. I am forever grateful that you choose to spend your time with me. Let's go get to work, and I'll catch you around the water cooler next time.